What if the Nazis discovered how to manipulate time itself? In a secret facility beneath Poland, they tested a bell-shaped device so dangerous that every scientist involved was executed to keep it silent. This is the story of Die Glocke and why it vanished without a trace. The story of the Nazi bell does not begin in 1945, but in the year 2000, when Polish military journalist and author Igor Witkowski published his book Prawda o Wunderwaffe, The Truth About the Wonder Weapon. Witkowski claimed he had been shown classified transcripts from an interrogation of former SS officer Jakob Sporenberg, who was tried and executed in Poland after the war. According to Witkowski, these documents revealed the existence of a top-secret project conducted under the code name Kronos, or Lantern Bearer. The project centered around a bell-shaped device that was being developed in a facility known as Der Riese, the Giant, near the Wenceslaus mine in the Owl Mountains of Lower Silesia. The location was perfect for such a clandestine operation. The Owl Mountains were already home to a vast network of underground complexes, part of the Nazi secret Riese project. The rugged terrain, combined with the existing tunnel systems, provided the perfect cover for the regime's most sensitive research. But what exactly was this bell-shaped device, and why has it captured the imagination of researchers, conspiracy theorists, and historians for over 2 decades? To understand the Nazi bell, we must first understand the desperate situation Germany found itself in during the final years of the war. By 1943, the tide of World War II had decisively turned against Nazi Germany. The defeat at Stalingrad, the Allied invasion of Italy, and the relentless bombing campaigns over German cities made it clear that conventional warfare would not secure victory for the Third Reich. In response, the Nazi regime poured enormous resources into developing Wunderwaffen, wonder weapons, that could turn the tide of the war. These were not just propaganda fantasies. The Germans made real breakthroughs: the V-1 flying bomb, the V-2 ballistic missile, the Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighter, and even early designs for intercontinental ballistic missiles. The Nazis also explored more exotic technologies. They researched sonic weapons, directed energy weapons, and advanced rocketry that would not be matched for decades. Some of these projects were grounded in real science. Others ventured into the realm of pseudoscience and desperation. It was within this context of frantic innovation and increasingly fantastical weapons programs that the bell allegedly emerged. According to the accounts, this was not just another rocket or jet engine. This was something that challenged the very laws of physics as understood at the time. The Nazi regime had already proven itself capable of developing revolutionary weapons technology. The V-2 rocket, after all, was the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile and the first human-made object to reach space. If they could achieve that, what else might they have been working on in their secret underground facilities? According to Witkowski's account from the alleged Sporenberg interrogation transcripts, the bell was approximately 9 feet wide and 12 to 15 feet high. The device was made of a hard, heavy metal and shaped like a bell, hence its name. The outer casing was allegedly covered in a ceramic material. Inside the bell were 2 counter-rotating cylinders that contained a mysterious substance the Nazis called Serum 525. This violet-colored, mercury-like liquid was supposedly highly radioactive and extremely dangerous. The cylinders would spin in opposite directions at high speed during the experiments. The device reportedly required enormous amounts of electrical power. Some accounts suggest it needed its own dedicated power plant. When activated, the bell allegedly emitted a pale blue glow and produced a humming sound. The area around it would become freezing cold, and a strange crystalline substance would form on nearby surfaces. But the most disturbing aspects of the bell experiments were their effects on living tissue. According to the accounts, the first test subjects were plants and animals. The results were horrific. Test subjects would decompose into a black gooey substance within hours of exposure. Later experiments allegedly involved human test subjects, prisoners from nearby concentration camps. At least 5 of the scientists working on the project reportedly died during the experiments. The official cause of death varied, but all seemed related to exposure to whatever radiation or energy the bell was producing. The bell was allegedly tested in a specially constructed chamber. The walls were lined with ceramic tiles, and the floor was designed for easy drainage, presumably to wash away the remains of failed experiments. After each test, the chamber had to be thoroughly cleaned and the tiles often replaced. What was the bell supposed to do? This is where the story enters truly speculative territory, but the theories are fascinating. Some researchers suggest the bell was an attempt to manipulate gravity or create an anti-gravity field. Others propose it was experimenting with time dilation or even time travel. The theoretical basis for these claims often references the work of legitimate physicists from the era. In the 1920s and 1930s, scientists like Hermann Oberth and Burkhard Heim were exploring exotic physics concepts. Einstein's theories of relativity had opened up new possibilities for understanding space and time. Could the Nazis have been attempting to weaponize these theories? Some proponents of the Nazi bell story point to a controversial physics concept called the torsion field or spin field. In this theory, rotating masses or electromagnetic fields could produce gravitational effects. The counter-rotating cylinders filled with a heavy mercury-like substance could theoretically create such fields. Mercury has unique properties. It is extremely dense, electrically conductive, and has unusual quantum mechanical characteristics. Some researchers have suggested that cerium-525 might have been a mercury isotope or a mercury compound mixed with radioactive materials. Another theory suggests the bell was a particle accelerator or a device for studying high-energy physics. The 1940s saw the birth of particle physics as a field. The Nazis certainly had talented physicists, including several Nobel laureates who remained in Germany during the war. However, mainstream physicists and historians are deeply skeptical of these theories. The energy requirements described for the bell seem impossibly high for 1940s technology. The effects attributed to it, gravity manipulation, time dilation, remain beyond our capabilities even today, 8 decades later. Yet the believers counter, what if the Nazis had made a breakthrough? What if they had stumbled upon some principle of physics that we still do not fully understand? After all, they did create the world's first practical jet fighter and ballistic missile. Perhaps the bell was another such leap forward, one that was lost when the facility was destroyed and the scientists disappeared. To understand the Nazi bell story, we must examine the location where it was allegedly housed. The Wenceslaus mine and the Der Ries complex in the Owl Mountains of Lower Silesia, Poland, formerly part of Germany. The Ries project was very real. Starting in 1943, the Nazis began constructing a massive underground complex in this region. The project employed thousands of forced laborers from concentration camps, including prisoners from the notorious Gross Rosen camp. The complex consists of several interconnected facilities spread across the mountainous terrain. There are underground tunnels, reinforced concrete structures, and mysterious circular foundations whose purpose remains unclear. The scale of the construction is staggering. Some tunnels extend hundreds of meters into the mountains. One structure in particular has become the focus of Nazi bell researchers, a circular concrete framework known as the Henge, due to its resemblance to Stonehenge. This structure sits on a hillside near the Wenceslaus mine. It consists of a concrete ring with internal supports, and the entire structure shows signs of exposure to extreme heat. Proponents of the bell theory point to several unusual features of the henge. The concrete shows a greenish discoloration, which some claim is evidence of exposure to radiation or exotic energy fields. The ground around the structure is bare of vegetation even today. The concrete itself appears to have been subjected to intense heat. Some sections look almost melted or vitrified. Could the henge have been a test stand for the bell? The structure's dimensions roughly match the described size of the device. Its isolated location, reinforced construction, and apparent exposure to extreme conditions make it an intriguing piece of physical evidence. However, skeptics offer alternative explanations. The structure could have been a cooling tower for industrial equipment, a foundation for a water tower, or part of the complex's ventilation system. The heat damage and discoloration might simply be the result of the structure's destruction by retreating German forces in 1945. What we know for certain is that the Nazis invested enormous resources into the Ries complex. The official explanation is that it was intended as an underground headquarters for Hitler, or as a secure facility for weapons production. But much about the complex remains mysterious, and large sections have never been fully explored. Every advanced weapons program needs brilliant minds behind it, and the Nazi Bell was supposedly no exception. According to various accounts, the project was headed by SS General Hans Kammler, one of the most mysterious and powerful figures in the Nazi war machine. Kammler was an engineer and architect who oversaw many of the Nazis' most ambitious construction projects, including concentration camps and the underground facilities for the V-2 rocket program. By 1945, he had become one of the most powerful men in the Third Reich, controlling vast resources and answering directly to Hitler and Himmler. Kammler's fate is one of the great mysteries of World War II. Official records state he died in April 1945, but the circumstances are unclear, and his body was never definitively identified. Some researchers believe he escaped to South America or was captured by the Americans and given a new identity in exchange for his knowledge. Other scientists allegedly involved in the Bell project included Dr. Walter Gerlach, a real physicist who worked on German nuclear research, and Dr. Kurt Debus, who later became a director at NASA's Kennedy Space Center as part of Operation Paperclip. The inclusion of scientists who later worked for NASA adds an intriguing layer to the story. Operation Paperclip brought over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians to the United States after the war. These men had worked on everything from rockets to chemical weapons. Did some of them possess knowledge of the Bell? There are persistent rumors that some Bell-related research continued in America after the war, perhaps influencing the development of aerospace technology or classified military projects. However, no concrete evidence has ever emerged to support these claims. What is certain is that many of Nazi Germany's most advanced weapons programs did continue in some form. After the war, the V-2 rocket became the foundation for both the American and Soviet space programs. Jet engine technology was rapidly adopted by all major powers. If the Bell was real, it would have been among the most prized spoils of war. By early 1945, Nazi Germany was collapsing. The Soviet Red Army was advancing from the east, and American and British forces were pushing from the west. The Nazis knew that their secret weapons facilities would soon be overrun. According to the Nazi Bell narrative, as Soviet forces approached Lower Silesia in early 1945, the SS took drastic action to prevent the Bell from falling into enemy hands. The device was allegedly dismantled and evacuated, possibly transported by a special convoy or even flown out by aircraft. Before evacuating, the Germans reportedly executed the witnesses. Jakob Sporenberg, in his alleged testimony, claimed that 62 scientists and technicians involved in the project were executed to maintain secrecy. They were allegedly killed by a special SS unit and buried in a mass grave that has never been found. The facility itself was reportedly destroyed. Explosive charges brought down tunnels, collapsed chambers, and obliterated evidence of what had been conducted there. Any papers or documents were burned. The ceramic tiles lining the test chamber were smashed and buried. When Soviet forces captured the region in May 1945, they found an abandoned and extensively damaged complex. If they discovered any clues about the Bell, they kept them classified. Soviet intelligence files from this period remain largely sealed even today. But what happened to the Bell itself? This is where the story branches into multiple theories, each more speculative than the last. Some believe it was flown out to Norway, then transported by submarine to South America, ending up in a secret Nazi refuge in Argentina or Paraguay. Others claim it was captured by American forces as part of a secret operation and taken to the United States, where it became the basis for classified aerospace projects. A few researchers even suggest it was successfully tested and used to escape Earth entirely, though this theory enters the realm of pure science fiction. A more mundane possibility is that the Bell never left Germany. Perhaps it was buried in one of the many unexplored tunnels of the Ries complex, sealed away for decades, or perhaps it was simply destroyed, blown up by its creators to prevent capture, leaving only rumors and fragments of documents behind. While the Nazi bell makes for a compelling story, mainstream historians and scientists have raised serious doubts about its authenticity. Let us examine the skeptical case against the bell. First, there is the problem of sources. The entire story rests primarily on Igor Witkowski's account of seeing classified documents in the 1990s. These documents have never been made public, and other researchers have been unable to verify their existence. Witkowski claims he was shown them by an intelligence contact, but was not allowed to copy them. No other wartime documents mentioning the bell or Zerum 525 have ever surfaced in any archive. Given that millions of pages of Nazi documents were captured and declassified over the decades, the complete absence of corroborating documentation is suspicious. Second, there are the scientific implausibilities. The effects attributed to the bell, gravity manipulation, time dilation, the spontaneous decomposition of organic matter into goo, do not align with known physics. While Nazi scientists were talented, they were working with 1940s technology and understanding. Third, many alleged details of the story do not hold up under scrutiny. The ceramic tiles that lined the chamber and showed unusual damage could have been ordinary industrial tiles from any facility. The mysterious Zerum 525 has never been identified or explained satisfactorily. No chemical or isotope matches the description. The henge structure, while unusual, can be explained as an industrial cooling tower or support structure. Similar concrete frameworks exist at other German industrial sites from the same era. The discoloration and heat damage could result from fire when the facility was destroyed. Fourth, some researchers have suggested that the Nazi bell is essentially a modern myth, a fusion of various real Nazi projects conflated with post-war UFO mythology. The description of the bell shares similarities with popular depictions of flying saucers that emerged in the 1950s and 1960s. Finally, there is the question of motive. Why would the Nazis invest massive resources in such an exotic and unproven technology when they desperately needed conventional weapons? By 1943-44, Germany needed tanks, aircraft, and ammunition, not experimental physics projects with no clear military application. Despite these objections, the Bell story persists, perhaps because it touches on something deeper: our fascination with lost technology, secret history, and the idea that there might be more to the past than we have been told. Whether real or mythical, the Nazi bell has left an indelible mark on popular culture and alternative history. Since Witkowski's book appeared in 2000, the bell has featured in countless documentaries, books, video games, and films. The bell appears in video games like the Call of Duty and Wolfenstein series, usually as a time machine or teleportation device. In these games, players must prevent the Nazis from using the bell to change history or open portals to other dimensions. Television shows, particularly those on cable channels devoted to mysteries and conspiracies, have produced numerous documentaries about the Nazi bell. These programs typically present the story as an unsolved mystery, interviewing believers and skeptics and visiting the actual sites in Poland. The sites themselves have become tourist attractions. The Owl Mountains and the Ries complex draw visitors interested in World War II history, underground facilities, and mysterious Nazi projects. Local guides offer tours of the tunnels and tell stories about the Bell experiments. The Bell has also sparked serious research by some investigators. While mainstream academics generally dismiss the story, a small community of researchers continues to dig through archives, interview witnesses, and explore the physical sites looking for evidence. Some researchers have connected the bell to UFO phenomena, suggesting that if the device was real, it might have been an early attempt at anti-gravity propulsion. They point to reports of unusual flying objects seen over Germany in the final months of the war, and to post-war UFO sightings that some claim were actually tests of captured Nazi technology. The story has even influenced discussions about current military technology. When the US government acknowledged the existence of UFO encounters by military personnel in recent years, some immediately speculated about connections to recovered Nazi technology like the bell. So what are we to make of the Nazi bell? After examining the evidence, the testimonies, and the theories, we are left with more questions than answers. For believers, the bell represents one of history's great cover-ups, proof that the Nazis were far more advanced than we have been told, and that powerful secrets remain buried in classified files or hidden in unexplored tunnels. They see patterns in the evidence, the real construction projects, the missing scientists, the unusual structures, and the persistent rumors that have endured for decades. For the skeptics, the Nazi bell is a perfect case study in how modern myths are constructed. They see a narrative built on second-hand testimonies from a single source, amplified by our cultural obsession with Nazi occultism and secret weapons, and polished by decades of speculative literature and sensationalist documentaries into something far more sinister than reality. In their view, what likely happened beneath those Polish mountains was mundane: a collapsing regime systematically destroying evidence of war crimes and abandoning half-finished weapons projects that never worked as intended. The engineers were executed not to protect some revolutionary secret, but to eliminate witnesses to atrocities. The concrete structures were bombed not to hide a technological marvel, but to cover up the evidence of slave labor and mass murder. The legend, they argue, is infinitely more interesting than the prosaic truth ever was. But perhaps the answer isn't so binary. Perhaps the reality exists somewhere in that murky territory between confirmed fact and complete fabrication. Maybe there was a project, something real, something genuinely classified, that became progressively distorted through the fog of war and the passage of time. A legitimate physics experiment exploring unconventional principles. A prototype centrifuge or particle accelerator that failed to produce results. A weapons test involving experimental propulsion systems that generated unexpected effects without ever becoming operational. Over time, wartime secrecy, Nazi propaganda designed to intimidate enemies, and the post-war human need for mystery transformed it into something it never was. The whispers became rumors. The rumors became stories. The stories became legend. What cannot be disputed, what stands as historical fact beyond any reasonable doubt is this: the Nazi regime did pour vast resources into revolutionary weapons technology. They did invest in programs that seemed like science fiction, rocket technology that would eventually take humanity to the moon, jet aircraft that outpaced anything the Allies possessed, infrared night vision, guided missiles. They did carve entire underground cities into mountains, constructing facilities so massive that many remain unexplored to this day. They did sacrifice countless human lives in the name of scientific progress, using concentration camp prisoners as disposable test subjects in experiments that defy moral comprehension. And they did employ some of the most brilliant scientific minds of the 20th century, giving them unlimited resources and pushing them to explore the outer limits of what contemporary physics deemed possible. The Nazis were simultaneously ahead of their time and morally beyond redemption. That combination makes it impossible to dismiss any story completely, no matter how extraordinary it sounds. So where does that leave us with Die Glocke? Whether the bell was a genuine leap forward in experimental physics, perhaps in electromagnetic propulsion or exotic energy research, a catastrophic scientific failure that consumed resources and lives before being abandoned, or simply a ghost story born from the ashes and chaos of the Third Reich's final days, it endures in our collective consciousness for a reason. It forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth, that even in humanity's darkest hour, even while committing industrialized genocide, we were simultaneously capable of reaching for the impossible, and that some of those reaches, whether successful or not, left marks in history that we still can't fully explain or account for. The Nazi bell remains locked in that liminal space between documented history and compelling fiction, a mystery sustained not by evidence, but by the absence of it, by missing records that were either destroyed or never existed, by conflicting accounts from witnesses with varying degrees of credibility, by the vast network of tunnels and chambers beneath the Owl Mountains that have never been fully mapped, never been completely explored, and may still hold secrets buried under 80 years of rubble and silence. And that's what makes this story so maddeningly persistent. It can neither be confirmed nor definitively debunked, New evidence could theoretically surface at any moment. A document buried deep in a former Soviet archive that Moscow has never fully catalogued. A deathbed confession from someone who was actually there, who saw something, who knows something. A discovery made in some forgotten underground chamber where no one has ventured since the spring of 1945. Physical evidence, a component, a photograph, a schematic that survived the purge. These possibilities, however remote, keep the mystery alive. Or perhaps the only truth, the hardest truth to accept, is this. In April 1945, as the Third Reich collapsed and Soviet forces closed in, someone in the SS High Command gave a final order. Destroy everything. Burn the documents. Demolish the structures. Bury the machines. Execute the witnesses. Erase it all. And maybe, just maybe, they succeeded completely. Maybe the bell was real, a functioning prototype of something genuinely revolutionary, and we'll never prove it because the evidence was too thoroughly eliminated. Maybe it never existed beyond a code name attached to a conventional project, and we'll never stop searching because the absence of proof isn't proof of absence. Maybe the truth is something else entirely, something we haven't even considered, some explanation that would make sense of all the contradictions if we only knew what question to ask. Either way, the search continues. Researchers still comb through archives. Explorers still venture into those tunnels. Authors still write books. Documentaries still get made. Because the most dangerous mysteries aren't the ones we solve and move past. They're the ones we can't let go. They're the ones that whisper to us across decades, suggesting that perhaps, just perhaps, something extraordinary happened in those mountains. Something that changed a handful of people who witnessed it. Something that justified extreme measures to keep it secret. Something that, if it existed, would challenge our understanding of what was possible in 1945. The Nazi bell may be history's greatest unsolved riddle, or it may be one of its most successful deceptions. Until someone finds proof, definitive, irrefutable, physical proof, it will remain exactly what it is now. A shadow, a question mark, an echo of something that might have been. And sometimes, the echo is all that survives.